Now, I don't want you to get the wrong impression about this video. Yes, there are multiple series that are going on next year, and there are some really, really big ones. So that's why I want to talk about some of maybe the standalones or palate cleansers, if you will, that I might try to tackle next year. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back with a quick little hit today. I'm going to talk about some standalones and some so-called palate cleansers that I'd like to get into. I've been kind of watching all day the TV about the hurricane coverage because we are in Houston. So guys, if you are in Houston or you are a little east to us in Louisiana, please be careful, be safe. All that stuff, but hey, this is an annual thing almost since like Harvey. Everyone's kind of on, red alert, but we'll be fine. Let's go ahead and talk about a couple of things here. I am starting Malazan next year. If you follow the channel at all, you know that. And I'm also going to be filling that in with some Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb. Not the whole series, but I'm going to take it as it goes and see how that is. So on this channel, I get a lot of recommendations for some really long series outside of those. And here's the thing. I'm going to start a lot of those series next year, probably. I mean, I do intend to do Poppy War. I'm interested in doing a lot of other smaller fantasy series that are like 3 books, 5 books at the most kind of thing. But the thing is I wanted to get back to some standalones. Something that I felt like I did really well in the 90s was it was all about King and Crichton. So I was always just able to fill in some standalones in between these long series. And I felt like that helped a lot of things. And last year, or actually this year, I've actually been filling in those gaps with Dresden Files, which a lot of people consider a nice palate cleanser because they're quick, easy reads. There's not just like this huge epic database you have to download into your head to be able to keep up with everything. So I wanted to be able to incorporate some things for next year while depending on how much Malazan crushes my soul, and so I wanted some kind of a standalones there to kind of in between those books to kind of ease things off without feeling like I had to fill out another huge world. So here's some of those. Now that I'm current on Dresden Files, I have to come up with some new things. So here's some standalones first, and then I'll talk about a few palate cleansers, which might be series, but they're supposed to be quick and easy reads. Starting off with some of the standalones here, Blake Crouch is an author I get recommended to me quite a bit. Everyone knows that I am a huge Michael Crichton fan, and they say that Blake Crouch is basically the modern version of Michael Crichton. Now look, what you guys have done with that comparison is you've set the bar up here. But I have heard very good things about Recursion and explicitly Dark Matter. So those are the two that are on my radar right now. I know he's done other things, but I'd like to kind of just stick with one of those two since those seem to be the most popular and kind of see how it goes along. I don't know what either of these books are about. In fact, most books on this list, I don't really know what they're about. They're just some ones that I looked up and said, okay, yeah, I could probably fit that in sometime next year. But I want you guys to understand, I'm not saying I'm going to read every one of these. So before you make the jokes about how I can't stick to a TBR, I mean, the jokes make themselves. I can't. These are just some ideas of things I'd like to pilfer in through the year next year and just and see if they can help me get back to a fresh start before I start the next Malazan book. Next up, Andy Weir's The Martian. I've heard a lot about The Martian, obviously. I saw the movie. I did not read the book. I actually had gotten the book to read before I watched the movie, and my wife was like, I don't want to wait. I want to watch the movie, so I'm going to watch it. If you want to watch with me, you can. So I went ahead and watched it with her, and I enjoyed it quite a bit, but then the book kind of fell off my radar. I think that probably gets recommended to me more and more every single day on the channel. So it was definitely one that I will find a way to litter in because I do want to put more science fiction on this channel. I do a lot of fantasy. I'm dedicating a whole month to horror. So I'd like to fill in some science fiction next year along with my Lu Shizhen in the Remembrance of Earth's Past series that I plan on doing. And Andy Weir seems to be a good one to start with. I'm not going to make a list like this and not talk about the King. I mean, Stephen King is obviously going to be my favorite author. He's going to be on this list because he writes mostly standalones besides Dark Tower. The Shining had a sequel, but again, he's not known for sequels, really. So there are a couple that I want to move on here that I didn't ever get to, and one of those is Revival, a story I've heard a great many things about. I scheduling conflict, I wasn't able to read it when it first came out, and then I kind of lost track of it, and I just never went back to it. And I thought I'll keep it for my Into the Multiverse series, but I'm like, I don't want to wait 2-3 years from now to read Revival. So Revival and Lacey's Story are going to be one on there because Lacey's Story is getting an adaptation on, I believe it's either Apple TV or HBO Max next year. It was supposed to be this year, but it got delayed because of the virus that shall not be named. But that and Revival, actually, Revival is getting an adaptation too, but I just want to read Revival because my dude Jaime Fuego on the horror show can't stop telling me about how it's like the best Stephen King novel of like the last 20 years. So that actually moved it up my list a little bit. But that is going to be happening. And sticking with the horror thing, I'm going to be reading Weave World by Clive Barker in October. And a lot of people are like, oh man, I wish you had picked Imagica. Or is it a Magica? A Magica? I think it's a Magica. I've been saying Imagica. A Magica. It's like Imagine. A Magica was I basically put it down to those two, and people chose Weave World. So I said, okay, you guys chose it, and now they're telling me it's not actually really horror. It's more fantasy. I'm like, okay, well, you guys chose it, so that's why we're getting Weave World in October. But early next year, I would like to do a Magic as well. I don't know why I haven't read Clive Barker up to this point. It's something I'm going to explore in October where I'm going to talk about why I never really did it. But I don't think that there's anyone that's a Stephen King fan who has told me, oh yeah, but Clive Barker's trash. I don't think I've ever heard that. So I'm expecting to enjoy his stuff enough to where I can say I'd like to make sure I get a second book in there sometime next year. And Magica seems to be the one. You talk about Stephen King, you got to talk about the apple falling off the tree. I read Nosferatu last year before I started Wheel of Time. That was right before I started this channel, actually. And that's by Joe Hill, which if you don't know, that is Stephen King's son. And I was actually really surprised at how much I enjoyed it. I'm not really willing to say that the apple didn't fall far from the tree, but I feel like it was a good step. And so it made it enough where I want to... Look, I love Lock and Key, the comics. I've read those comics. I enjoy the hell out of them. But I never actually gotten into his books. And so when I read Nosferatu, I was actually surprised to see that it takes place in his dad's multiverse, which is a very, very big deal to me. So I'd like to continue that trend with the Fireman and or heart-shaped box. I think one of those, I'll flip a coin on those. I never read Horns when it came out because I just felt like the expectations were going to be so high for it to be like his dad that I just thought that was unfair to him, so I never read that. But these two I've heard pretty good things about, so I'd like to throw one of those on here. If you've read any Joe Hill, guys, let me know what you think. I've actually impressed based off Nosferatu. Charlie Manx was definitely felt like he was a villain that could fit within the multiverse, so I'm hoping there's more of that. Something that I like to do is I'll read the book and then watch the adaptation. My wife will just say, okay, I'll just watch the adaptation with you. So when she reads a book, I try to do the same. Hey, if there's a movie about it, I'll watch the movie with you. And one that she did, I believe it was late last year, maybe early this year. I don't really recall. This whole virus thing has got my time all mixed up. But she read Life of Pi by Jan Martel. I hope I'm saying that right. And I didn't really know what I was expecting because I think that the trailers for that movie did it an injustice. I was like, okay, it's a kid in a boat with a tiger. That doesn't seem very exciting to me. And the movie was just exceptional. I loved it. I was moved. I was blown away by how much I enjoyed it. So I said, that is definitely going on my list. So I think if I had to pick one book off this list for sure that I'm going to read next year, it's going to be Life of Pi because I absolutely loved that movie. It really did. It pulled some tears out of me. It was that good. So I'm hoping I can get that same feeling from this book because it's a thinker. I don't know if you've seen the movie or read the book, but it really does make you question some things. And I got to read it to see if I feel the same way as I did watching that movie because I absolutely love that movie. One of my favorite movies that I've seen probably in the last decade. It's stunning to look at. It is emotional to watch, and it is just wonderfully acted. So hey, thumbs up to Life of Pi if you haven't seen the movie. But I definitely would like to read that one. Naomi Novik, Spinning Silver is one I mentioned on my female fantasy authors that I'd like to read. And I think that it being not part of a series and just being a standalone makes it be the one that I would like to read from her first. I know it deals with like fairy tales and things like that. I love fantasy that deals off of old fairy tales. So I think it's like Rumpelstiltskin or something like that. If that's not accurate, I apologize. That's just what I think I remembered. But sure, I'm very, very interested in anything that's based off of a fairy tale because I think can we have a lot of fun with those kind of things, like playing off of like old Grimm fairy tales and things like that, like Dresden Files does. I love that. I love it. So give me some more of that. So I will definitely probably be checking that one out, and also I'll be checking out for the first time, and I know you guys are going to be like, Mike, give me your dork card here. I have never read Neil Gaiman. Don't know why. Don't have any answer for you when people ask me why, because it seems like it's something that would be right in my sweet spot. I love Sandman, the comic. So, I mean, if you want to count that, you can. I know a lot of people, elitists, they don't count when you read comics for some reason. But I read that and absolutely loved it. But I know that his books are very different. So Stardust is the one that I have on this list to read because a very dear friend of mine, she actually gave me that book years ago before the movie was coming out. And I said I was going to read it before the movie came out. I didn't read it, didn't see the movie. And then I just never really remembered it until recently when I made like my favorite authors. And she was like, I'm seeing a lack of Neil Gaiman on there. And I'm like, because I still haven't read it. So I feel like I not only owe it to her, I owe it to myself because I don't see any reason why I wouldn't love Neil Gaiman. I liked Good Omens, the TV series, but I love anything with David Tennant. I don't know. But I definitely think that I want to read some Neil Gaiman. And everybody says this one or American Gods. I read the synopses for both, and this one sounded like the one that would be more in my wheelhouse. It sounded almost like a fairy tale, like a Princess Bride kind of thing. So that obviously is going to interest me. And I'd like to see it just to see why people love Neil Gaiman so much. But do I really need to give you a reason why I want to read Neil Gaiman? There we go. Cormac McCarthy. This is an interesting one because I know everybody thinks I'm going to say No Country for Old Men. But I'm going to say Blood Meridian. I don't really have a reason for you. The only thing I've ever read from him is The Road, and I loved it. But you kind of have to be in the mood for a book of his, from what I've been told. Don't really know. But Blood Meridian seems to be the one, again, reading the synopses, where it sounds like that's the one that I would enjoy the most. The whole No Country thing, at this point, I feel like all I would do is compare it to the movie, and I don't like to do that. So that's why I chose Blood Meridian over it. But hey, say I read Blood Meridian, I love it just as much as I love The Road. No Country for Old Men could probably happen too. So there we go. Cormac McCarthy. I didn't realize that this guy hadn't wrote a book since like 2006. Did he retire? Is he still alive? I think he is. I don't even know. I don't know these things. So if you're a big Cormac fan, drop in and let me know what you think there. And my last standalone I have on this list, my wife's favorite book of all time is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. My favorite book of all time is Dune by Frank Herbert. One thing that her and I have not done in 10 years of marriage is we have not read each other's favorite books because I feel like I've always been afraid to read it because what if I don't love it as much as she does? I'm going to be afraid to tell her that, and I just don't think she's read Dune because I just don't know if she wants to. But I decided this is going to be the year I bought that really handsome Barnes & Noble edition of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. They're not extremely long books, so I think I would definitely like to fit that in this year just so I could say, hey, you know what? I read your favorite book and you've never read mine because, it's all about receipts in marriage, guys. It's a totally healthy thing to do, trust me. And that's pretty much it for these standalones. I have a couple of palate cleansers, and I say that because these are series, and I don't want to say, I don't want to start more series, and then say I'm going to start more series. These, I think, are comparable to something like a Dresden Files, maybe not in quality, but in weight. I feel like these are ones that don't sound like they require too much of a commitment, and you can pick one up and then pick another one up months down the road. It's not a big deal. You're not going to be lost or confused or anything like that. And I'm going to start with a couple. One that's kind of going to be a shocker to you. If you watched, again, that female fantasy authors, I said I wanted to put this one on here, but people know that I do not like YA. I don't like YA tropes. I'm quite fine if you like young adult fiction. I think it's great. As long as people are reading, guys, I'm happy. I don't care if you're reading the funny pages. If you're reading, it's all good with me. I will never judge. Like I saw everybody getting all uppity about everybody reading that new Twilight book. I don't care, man. If it makes you happy, you read it. As long as you're reading, I am happy. I don't like a lot of YA tropes. So when I say the series I'm going to say next, you're probably going to flip out. But I'm talking about Shadow and Bone, the Grisha books by Leigh Bardugo, I believe her name is said. What I said in that one is, the way I look at it is it's one of two things. Either I'm going to be pleasantly surprised by it, or I'm going to have something to roast. So either way, I feel like it's going to go over well. What I said is I wanted to read it before that Netflix adaptation came out, just because. But who knows? Who knows if I'll even get these in. That's obviously not very high on here, mostly because it's a series, and I haven't heard a lot of good things from people in my age bracket. So that one might seem a little far-fetched. But like I said, I am trying to put more women into my my lineup this year because I do feel like I've really neglected that, and I would like to do something besides just Robin Hobb, So that's why I've got them there. Again, it's not about pats on the back or anything. I don't care about all that stuff. It's something to me. I feel like I'd like to see what their strengths are compared to male fantasy authors. I know what their strengths are because I've read a bazillion of them. I've only read, Anne Rice for the ladies. So that, R.F. Kuang, like I said, I'm going to be reading Poppy War next year. Realm of the Elderlings. Anna Stevens, I'm going to be reading. That's the, what's it called? The Godblind trilogy. So yeah, I'm going to be adding some of those things on here next year. But again, you can watch that video if you haven't seen it. Next up, we have the Bobaverse series by Dennis Taylor. This We Are Legion, I think is the first book's called. This is one I've been described to me as it's Dresden Files in space. It's not a heavy commitment. There's 3 books right now. I think the 4th one's coming out next year. But I looked at them. They're like 300 pages on paperback. I mean, that's perfect. That's perfect between an epic fantasy novel, I think. So that's why that one is on here. I haven't heard much else about this series except just like if you like Dresden Files and you like science fiction, you're probably going to enjoy these quite a bit. But I have the first 3 on my Kindle, so I definitely think that one's going to be a little higher on here. And then my last one, the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. I've heard that these are something you can read in like one sitting, that they're like 100 pages. I think that there's 5 of them now, and I believe the 5th one is actually a novel, but the first 4 are like novellas. I might be wrong on that. That's just what I was told right before I started this. And no other reason except it sounds fun. From what I was reading the description, it almost sounds like something that, not quite on the humor level of a Douglas Adams, but it sounds like something that could have been like inspired by Hitchhiker's Guide, just like a sentient robot that is just a total smartass. Sure, that sounds great. I love science fiction like that. I love fun, funny science fiction. It doesn't have to be so super. I've got The Expanse and stuff like that, and Dune if I want super serious science fiction. Hitchhiker's Guide is one of my favorite books of all time, man. So sure, if it's going to be any kind of humor, even close to that, I am there. I've heard about Martha Wells for years, but I couldn't think of any. There was one other series of hers that I had heard of but never read any. But I figured this would be a good launching point because a lot of people recommend these books, and I think that they will be the perfect size in between 1,200 page paperbacks of Malazan, where the font is like 6 point. Those books are massive, right? So if it sounds like I am demotivated about Malazan, I am not. I've just always been intimidated by that series. And now that I've got this huge warband of people that are joining the read-along for it, there's no stopping it now. There's no backing out of it. So I am locked in, and we are just like 3 months away from that. So yeah, it's time to get worried, right? So guys, that's what I got. Some palate cleansers, some standalone books. I would like to incorporate standalones again because everything is like a book 1 of 7 or book 1 of 9. I'm just tired of that. It's going to burn me out on fantasy, and I don't want to do that. So I definitely think some things like this will help. You got any recommendations, or do you have any standalones that you'd like to get into next year, or hell, this year? Drop in the comments. Let me know what they are, guys, and I will talk to you there.